Yes, Jah people, this is Michael Shamaya representing. I will say, Hail the Lion voice, saying it is time for the lions and the lionesses to tell their own story. King David killed Goliath with a stone, we original dread.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes, wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
It's AWTITUDE representing for Lion's Voice. Yes, massive. This is the time for I and I, the lion them to tell I and I story, our story. Yes, and we reign and rule like this. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. You can't take the lion vibes, people. If you no fool, cause we no Selassie reign and rule. Reign and rule. Selassie, I reign and rule. Queen Omega drop them in the fire, pull from them, no Queen Omega, she reign and rule. Royal Kushite, ancient essence, Emperor Selassie in a majestical presence, flash of all sevens, projecting through I and I events. We sing a song for the king, we bring joy and blessing and overstanding, yeah. We hear Jah every day, reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, reign and rule. Yes, I lion vibes, Selassie, reign and rule. Attitude say that Boondocks, Black Organization of Global Diplomats optimizing expressions to the world. Till the world, till the end.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jah soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I jolly for say that.
The ultimate challenge, you say, why was the ultimate challenge? The ultimate challenge is all man have become a new race, you know. There's a phenomenal change you talk about. There's that phenotype you talk about skin, you know. It's about mindset. That must say you're not all allegiance to your country, but you're allegiance to the entire human community. So you talk about how you shift the mindset. And if you read like the people who are the Indian people in Raja Yoga, that is what they call a golden consciousness. That shift in a mindset, where you, when I speak about until the philosophy which came out of the meeting in Addis Ababa about all African nations. That's about a different kind of being in earth. Different being. And there's a challenge to the entire globe. And I think the same thing I talk to the world on behalf of the world, which is a very unique statement.
The year is 1892, and the land of Ethiopia has been experiencing 4 years of terrible famine and drought. They call it the Kikuken, or the evil days. At least 1/3 of the human population and 90% of the cattle have died. The hyenas have feasted on so many carcasses that they have become overweight and barely able to move. Just when the people could take no more of the evil days, a woman named Wasiro Yeshimabe is giving birth in a place called Erjersa Gora. This is her 9th attempt to bring forth new life. Her previous 8 attempts only resulted in death. Will this child live? Thankfully, a healthy baby boy is born. His first cries are drowned by thunder and lightning flashes across the night sky. The heavens open up and torrential rain starts to fall. Ethiopia's drought is over, and the baby boy is given the name Tafari, meaning one to be feared or respected. Lidj Tafari's father, Ras Tafari, is a very important man in 1892 Ethiopia. Although he is overjoyed at the birth of his newborn son, he cannot spend much time with him. Ras Tafari is the governor of Harar and must get back to the famous walled city to deal with its affairs. Furthermore, he is the foreign minister of Ethiopia, and having traveled to different places in Europe, he is very aware of the material and military advances they have made and the looming threats they pose to his country. Ras Tafari knows that the majority of Ethiopians have no idea what is coming, and that he has to work that much harder to secure the realm. Lidj Tafari would grow up to become the legendary emperor Haile Selassie I. To understand his journey, we must first understand the Ethiopia that he was inheriting and what it was like when he was born in 1892. Get your copy of Kwesi Bansu's book, Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1, The Rise of the Priestly Warrior Kings, and increase your knowledge about the history, politics, and culture of Ethiopia in 1892, and how it connects to the rest of African and world history at the time. Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1 is available for purchase at www.bookmanexpress.pub. Please visit for more information.
Yeah.
While the ancient society, people can look on some of the infrastructure and social structure. But there's a greater agency, which is the knowledge, and what Ethiopia represent. Because let me tell you something. These guys in Rome, I know that Haile Selassie has grown up as a youth, because about 1892. Yes, I'm at the Berlin conference where they plan to split up Africa. As a youth, you're knowing these things and you're hearing about these things because people know what I want. See? And you think about now, these people recognize that Ethiopia is a place where the seat of the knowledge is. The discussion surrounding the Ark of the Covenant is not something that's happened just the other day. These are things that are always being discussed. See, when people talk about Knight Templars and those people are always searching for and know of a number of different things. So sometimes when we are reasoning about it, I don't know if people really truly recognize what Ethiopia represented. There was a virgin named Reverend M. Means, I think, who wrote a book named Ethiopia and the Missing Link in about 1945. Mm-hmm. And in that book, he wrote that the coronation of Haile Selassie reflected one of the most ancient practices of ancient Atlantis. And he was arguing that it was in the fact that in ancient Atlantis, persons who governed certain spaces were called kings, and the ones who governed the entire Atlantean colonies was called the King of Kings. So he was linking that principle of the King of Kings in Ethiopia to that of ancient Atlantis. But it was also, but if it also look at other people who were influenced by ancient Ethiopia, which includes India, which is a daughter of Ethiopia, according to this Greek man Herodotus. In India, a person who becomes an enlightened being is called an Agas. And so the most enlightened of all enlightened beings is called an Agus Nagas. Is the root of the words and the sounds you use it. And if you look at all the Naga people are the most spiritual people as a matter of what they are saying, those were Ethiopians who came and ruled and governed India. They actually call them Naga, the Naga people. So you find that those people knew what Ethiopia represents and had significant interest. And now you have a youth who's been born to a man who's a general, who's fully aware of what those plans are. I know that part of his responsibility is not just his son now. He must be thinking about succession planning in terms of a whole generation of youth who must grow now to safeguard Ethiopia. That is a part of the mindset. And Haile Selassie was being socialized amongst other youth as well. Yes. To know it's all right. And early, he says by the time he reached about age 13, he must have been given responsibility to govern a space.
Yeah, man.
Seeing some serious things I made me now. 13 from 1892, 20 or 13. That's what? About 19 much. That's just before World War. That's just before World War.
1895, yeah.
You see what I say? So you must think about World War in Europe. Europe and facing some serious problems them time there,
Yeah.
And so even the whole interest in Africa became even stronger now. This way, you hear me talk about it, how we get resources. So Haile Selassie as a youth are growing at a time whereby that part of the world is in serious turmoil and exploitation in Africa was at a serious level.
The slave trade was active in Ethiopia at that time, the African slave trade going through Arabia. You know what I mean? This was very prevalent in Ethiopia at the time of his birth. Harar was one of the major slave trading ports for Africans coming from the interior. We're also talking about a time where the European powers, were starting to really clamp down in terms of, before they started with trade deals and the British trading companies, but this is a time when they're actually, locking down territory and establishing, physical colonies of people to really take over the resources of the land. So it's a very, as you say, it's a tumultuous time. And His Majesty says at the age of 13, although his position allowed him to sit in judgment, he decided to appoint someone else to sit in judgment until he was 16. And you can imagine His Majesty was a small man, so when he was a child, he was even smaller. So he didn't want to embarrass the people to have this child, making decisions over life and death, even though he had the authority. So think about the mind of a youth that is thinking in this way, as a teenager, where he's still pulling the strings and appointing and delegating tasks, and governing, but he's doing it in a way that, that Christ consciousness that we talk about, that anointed vibration where all knowledge is accessible from him born, because His Majesty also says, I got in trouble as a child, but you know why? Because I wanted to learn more, and my teachers wanted to rest. You know what I mean? And he was just tiring out all of his tutors, his homeschool collective.
Is the one ushering the age of information. Is knowing. So the quest for knowledge, as I said, I took responsibility for that area as well, which is education.
Yes,
and by the way, 13 is also 4 now, 3 and 1 is 4 now. That's the next stability number right there, so as well, See,
Yes.
so a lot of these things we can connect and see. There was no error. There was no error. And the time period, I mean, is a serious time period that persons were growing up in that time, and people must look and see what was happening in Africa in the early 1900s. What happened to why the World War I started? You can hear stories, but find out what is the real reason behind World War I. All that will come down to who have access to what resources and where.
That's it. Right.
And you check it now. It's the same thing I go on now,
Yes.
See, so as I say, I grew up as a youth, coming up in the early 1900s, and World War I finished, and Marcus Garvey rise. The same 1920s, early 1920s.
Yes.
And you have the same kind of madness with a pandemic, like about the Spanish flu them time,
Spanish flu, yeah, the Spanish flu.
All right. Which
Yes.
actually, during that time, it also got precipitated a depression that took place globally as well, That's why it's kind of worried about global depression right now, same way.
Yeah, man, 1930. Same
All
thing
right.
happened.
So all those things are being repeated, but here now you find out that when I came and started to deal with the whole governance, the approach was, because Selassie had some words, the approach of governance is a model. Is that people have realized. So the idea is that Rastafari but involved in government, and you want a model that works in terms of when you move from an undeveloped state to a developed nation state. Look at the model that Selassie manifests within Ethiopia. See? Yeah, remember again the principle as above, so below. And the ethic and the mindset is what governs and determines how you implement the model of governance and service. So nothing about change. It's twice you give one's constitution and revive the constitution. It's twice. It's about empowering people to empower themselves.
Yes.
Those are significant changes being made. So you can find the infrastructure and the education and the healthcare and all those in the amount of scholarship that are being given, but all those elements you can see. So the modernization process that people talk about is a process of changing.
Yes.
When I spoke to that was the League of Nations, gone past League of Nations, the United Nations. See? The ultimate challenge, you say, when so the ultimate challenge? The ultimate challenge is how man have become a new race, There's a phenomenal change you talk about. There's that phenotype you talk about skin, It's about mindset. That must say you're not all allegiance to your country, but you're allegiance to the entire human community. So you have to about how you shift the mindset. And if you read like the people who are the Indian people in Raja Yoga, that is what they call a golden consciousness. That shift in a mindset, where you, when I speak about the until the philosophy which came out of the meeting in Addis Ababa about all African nations. That's about a different kind of being in earth. Different being. And that's a challenge to the entire globe. And I think the same thing I talk to the world on behalf of the world, which is a very unique statement. But how can you talk to the world on behalf of the world?
Right.
I want to give Dr. Asantewaa a chance to jump in there.
Right. I just want to linger for just one moment, if I can, please, on the 13-year-old Lidj Tafari. And of course, this is when he gets to Jazmaj. But before that, in his autobiography, he says this, and if you don't mind, I just will read it. It says, from the age of 13 onwards, although my physical strength may not have been great, my spiritual and intellectual powers began to increase gradually, and thus had the entrance gate of this world open. And this was the time at which I started to act on my own will, without being ordered by my tutor, distinguishing good and evil. And as an educator, when I read that, I was like, boom, that window opened for him. I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Grant Venerable, who's an educator using the old model, pre-Brown versus Board of Education, the African way of teaching children. And he said, it's like windows open at certain times. But if you are not nurtured, the window doesn't open.
Yeah.
Right? So although we can talk about the mystic side of it, that he came to the world to do this, people had to do things to ensure that window opened at 13, right? Yeah. And that's what his father recognized when he gave him the Jazmaj at 13. But what had to happen? Namely, if we go back and we look how child development happens, we see an important central role of the mother. One of the main things she must do is breastfeed. And insofar as his mother left early, we have to surmise that she used every day that she could to breastfeed him. Because even from anciency, it was known that royalty, genius, all those things, its main medium is breast milk. Yeah, right? And increasing the contact, skin to skin contact between yourself and that child. That had to happen. The brain doesn't even fire if it doesn't happen, right? The mind doesn't open. The windows don't open, right? And not only that, the use of her voice. And I just heard this on National Public Radio this year, that there was a phenomenon a couple years ago where people started using baby Mozart and baby Einstein, these musical types and CDs for children to learn from. Well, all that has now been debunked. Researchers has found it don't matter what kind of classical music you play, it won't hurt the baby. But if you want the baby's mind to open, let the mother sing. Her voice does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but the sound of her voice, when they measure the electric current in the human brain, the brain is all lit up. All of these things had to happen. Care had to be poured in. What we call unpaid work here that isn't respected by the dominant culture, but what women must do for geniuses and gods to walk amongst us was done for His Majesty.
Tell them bow Lidj Tafari, tell them bow I listen lassie I when me tell them bow Lidj Tafari, tell them bow I listen lassie I when me tell them bow Lidj Tafari, tell them bow I listen lassie I when me tell them bow Lidj Tafari, tell them bow I listen lassie I. The 23rd of July, born in a province named Hazar. I burn them God from sky, cause I know the prophecy is true. Cause unto us the son was born 1892. He built the OAU, come break all chains. Tell them Tafari was his name, the same man that crowned as the Ras. It didn't come fast. Went from Lidj to the chas match, who governed in Harar from the age of 13. This is you blessed with Irit, supreme first king. Hear the throne with him queen, hear the trumpet sound. Gather round, tell the youths them come in. Here Lidj Tafari, tell them bow. I listen lassie, let me tell them bow. Lidj Tafari, tell them bow. I listen lassie, tell them so. Fight so many wars just to centralize the tribes. No 9 to 5 remains came when the king arrived. Cause out of the womb of Yashima bet he survived, born wise. Plus he focused on his plan, no joke. Armies await his command. They say a child shall lead the way. When them see how the warriors surround, that's when the people them say, this child destined for the throne. When them see how we govern in Harar, that's when they all bow down. The government on his shoulders, Mussolini coming with his plan. He's preparing his soldiers, but his plan has to fail. Weep not, the Lion of Judah prevail. Hail Lidj Tafari.